we're having this conversation for the community, but also for ourselves as well. And we're growing in the process too. Being vulnerable, talking about these things that are not as comfortable as they would like to be, or we're not as successful as we like to be in these categories or these facets of our life. Because like people talk about friends and relationships all the time, but then we have to define, well, what is that? Because in regard to that, like if this is what helps us to navigate life, what helps us to want to be here physically in this life on this earth, then why don't we really focus on cultivating proper relationships and friendships and closeness and intimacy and all these things that we talk about, but we don't, it seems like we don't know what they are. Yeah. You know, and that's troubling, you know, and that's why I'm glad for this platform and Nashana being on here, because she's bringing clarity to me, to all of us, and the people who are watching and listening. And again, we're not saying we have all the answers. We're not even saying that. We're just saying that we have to, like Kayode said, we have to bring this up because it's affecting us. And the more we keep avoiding it, it's not going to get better. It's just going to get worse, right? It's just going to get worse if we don't address it properly. And not to demean people, you know, so we're not here to demean anybody, men or women, but we saying, we putting our own selves on the line and say, hey, here's what we have experienced. Now, if you experience something different, please share, because that will help change our perspective and give us a better understanding or a better way of dealing with it and maybe overcoming it. But, you know, if we're just talking at each other all the time and not really listening, then what's really getting done? What's really getting solved?
Awesome. And Nashana, we have like a few more minutes left. So with the end, if you don't mind, yes, come up with some possible next steps or solutions or tangibles. And hopefully, I hope we can continue this conversation, because we're just touching the surface with this stuff. There's so many levels to this thing that, you know, I think we should address, we should talk about, you know, just put it on the table and give our perspective on. So I think that doing that is very powerful. So yes, with the few minutes we have left, what are some of the solutions? What we talked about before? We talked about what do you bring to the table, right? We talked, you know, I brought up the situation in regards to, you know, we cleared that up. Women bring more to the relationship than men, but Nashana clarified that. We talked about the men-to-men relationship versus the woman-to-woman relationship, and how I said we're comparing apples to oranges. We talked about the immaturity. There are a lot of things we talked about. So I guess what I'm saying, friend zone. So based on what you have, what, you know, how you interpret, what are some solutions that, you know, based on what we recall from this conversation, from your perspective, what are some solutions that you can offer?
Sean, you want to
go? I'm still on the mention of the suicide, because in relationships that just hit me hard. Because I think we all know about the young man Twitch that really hit me hard, and I didn't know him personally, you know, but it hit me hard. Just to see that there's just so many levels, and it goes back to relationships. It really, really, really does. And us not really digging into like what they are. It just, a lot of things are so surface. Like I think that's what this generation, because I've been doing a lot of like research looking at Generation Z and trying to really pay attention to like what they need. And a lot of what I'm reading and research is vulnerability and accountability, which is what it seems that we lack. So I think now, if you think about social media, even though social media has its negatives, there are some positives where discussions are being had and people are able to watch these discussions and just really spark new discussions within, you know, different communities and stuff like that. So I really believe there's a positive aspect to these things, and it really does all go back to, like you said at the beginning, relationships. I mean, men, women, women, men. It just goes back into and what that looks like. So defining what that looks like, and being okay with accepting if, hey, I had some unhealthy, you know, and that's in friendships too. Like, you know, I value my friends, right? I try my best to be an active friend, right? Because life happens and things change, and, you know, we change and we grow. Some people will not be with you at the end, but some people are there supposed to be a part of your circle. And that takes work. And people don't realize all the time that that takes work, right? That takes check-ins. That takes times of you just doing different things just to make, you may not be able to spend that time, but just to make sure that you are accountable. And I think that that's what it goes to. That's why I would say accountability would be my takeaway. Just really making sure that we accountable for who we say we are in a person's life. We won't get it right all the time. I'm not saying that. There will be
Right.
times where we will, let certain things fall by the wayside. But if we have in our mind at all the time, I have to hold myself accountable. If I'm saying I'm this person's friend, or I'm in a relationship with this person, whatever it may be, that's another human life. So I need to think of it like that. Like, I need to be responsible in the way that I care for them. Does everyone do that? No. Does it take a lot of work? Yes. But I think that that's one thing I would take away is just accountability. And there's nothing wrong. I mean, as I get older, I start to learn there's nothing wrong with saying I'm sorry, like my fault, I did that wrong, and there's nothing wrong with sharing with a person, hey, that hurt my feelings, or hey,
Right.
can we discuss this? Hey, I mean, that's another level of vulnerability, which is a discussion by itself, because like Cal said a couple of sessions ago, that it actually takes a strong person to be vulnerable in front of another person, and we're not as strong as we think. We're not as strong as we think. We're not as strong as we think. So that'll be one takeaway: just accountability. Just try to hold ourselves a little bit more accountable in our relationships.
Cal, you mind if I'm gonna be real quick, give you the last.
Sir.
All right, so thank you, Nishana. I want to go back to what you said in regards to trauma. This was something that I didn't realize until a few years ago. And I think that's part of one of the many things that plague us as a culture, community. I didn't realize, and this is what I mean, in addition to the programming from the media and all that other stuff, and this is a tough thing I'm about to say, probably. I didn't realize how pervasive, if that's the right word, that sexual assault is within our community and our family. Because we're talking about intimacy, right? And we're talking about maturity. And we're talking about how that always ties into sex. And we talk about how the media. I didn't realize, it didn't dawn on me, because thank God for my mom, she protected me and protected me from my family. That's the part, right? Because they say studies is a lot of persons sexually assaulted not by somebody they didn't know. It's always by somebody they did know. So when we talk
somebody
about,
they do know,
right?
Aware of, yeah.
So when we talk about sexual assault, as young children, you brought up the age like 13, 14, you could be 40 years old. And because you haven't dealt with the trauma that happened to you at 14, you end up, it stays with you until you deal with it. I think that's what we're seeing in our community, within our culture. A trauma that we've never dealt with. And then tie that into, Cal, what you said in regards to our stigmatization on seeking help through therapists and counselors. That's always been stigmatized, right, as a negative thing, as weak. So I'm saying that to say, as far as my final words, as far as solutions for us to be aware of the sexual assault that happens to us at a young age, both male and female, that carries with us throughout our relationships, which is why we can't have healthy relationships, because we never dealt with what we've been attacked with and assaulted with early on. So the first thing I would say is for us to be aware of that, acknowledge that, and that it's not a bad thing. That, like you also mentioned, Nishana, vulnerability, right? And then tie that into human life. Considering another person's life, that's a maturity stage when we get to the human life, but vulnerability. So I think it's important that we first acknowledge the fact and look into it, do a self-introspection on our relationships, why our relationships has failed, what did I do to contribute to its failure? Is it associated to a sexual assault that I experienced growing up? If it's assaulted to a sexual experience that I experienced growing up, being open to seeking help via therapist, someone's licensed, right? And then just start there and allow that to build. And then, I could go on with that, but I think as far as solutions, I think that's one of the things that I want to contribute to this discussion is acknowledging that, right? That, self-interest. You mentioned it as well, Nishana, relationships are a mirror of ourselves, right? So if you're in this relationship with somebody, it's a reflection of who you are. That's a good place to start. Well, what did I see or didn't like from that person I was in a relationship with? Maybe that's something that'll help me with my self-evaluation process. That applies to me. So I didn't like this, so that means I must be this way. This other person did that. That must mean there's something of me that person did in me. So let me start there. Okay, if that's the case and I don't realize it, now let me seek help, therapy, and make notes. Therapist, this is what I've seen in the other person that's a reflection of me that I may need help. Can you help me do a deep dive and figure out if that's if that's a part of me, and then start that conversation that way. I know that was, but that's what I would contribute as far as solutions that'll help us heal as far as relationships are concerned, because it starts with us.
Great. That's great assessment from both of you all. Jules, gems, family, dropping gems. Please take note because it doesn't take a lot to get the process started, but it's going to be a journey. It's going to be a journey of you requiring to look at yourself and to have patience and grace with yourself. And that's one thing I'm noticing a lot in society is that we're so go, 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 work, 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 that it devalues self. You begin to devalue yourself based on, well, this is my work and this is my job and this is who I am. No, the job is something you do, who you are as a human being. And in America, we associate ourselves a lot with our jobs. Well, I'm a teacher, I'm a this, I'm an engineer, I'm a that. Where versus when you go to other countries, they're like, well, oh, I'm part of this family, I'm from this community. Like it's a totally different association. And but that's indoctrinated in us living here in America. And again, it's not to say that we don't reap the fruits of our labor to some extent. To some extent, we do have more trinkets and creatures of comfort than most places, but at what cost? At what cost? A cost of your sanity, a cost of your morality, a cost of your belief, value system of self. And both Nishana and Kayode made some great points. So please take heed. And one thing I want to add on to what Kayode said, I think it's, and Nishana, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 women are sexually assaulted. Or have been sexually assaulted. And like you're saying, mostly it comes from people that they know of or they are aware that exist, meaning that come from family members or someone from the community that they may not be friends with, quote unquote, but they know their face. They know they've seen them before, which is very scary, right? Can be very scary. And then like Kayode said, you said too, relationships will expose us. I know from now, for me being older and more aware, I'm sure I've been a bad friend or quote unquote a bad friend to somebody. I'm sure. I didn't think so in the past, but I'm sure I probably have been. And again, not being aware of it, just something I did or said, and they probably wasn't feeling it, but they didn't express that to me. Because people have done it to me and I have not expressed that to them, but now I'm in a place where I can express it respectfully. And like we talked about Brother Tyrese earlier, and other people who choose to put their lives on social media in that way, we have to begin, like Kayode said, if you keep repeating that pattern, if the same things keep happening, you're going to have to start to look at self and see, how am I playing into this? I'm not saying it's all their fault or all your fault, but you're going to have to start seeing how you plan into these scenarios and why they keep reappearing and why they keep playing out the same way. It has to be something that you're not seeing or you're not getting. And that's where the therapy, the counseling, the JEGNAs, the mentors, as people call them, the community will help you to become more aware of that, blind spot that you have within your way of associating with yourself and associating with people. So I just want to say, give yourself grace and patience and begin to look at self with a certain lens or certain belief system that whatever it is, you can find it out and you can improve. And from that will start the healing, that will start to be more aware of your actions and what you really want out of life. What do you want from your relationships? Do you just want somebody just to be your cheerleader? Do you want somebody that's going to be a cheerleader, but then be your intimate partner? Because I thought it was said that, your mate, if you choose to marry in that way, is supposed to be your best friend. That's what I thought. You know, that's what I've heard throughout the years, but maybe, you know, maybe I'm tripping. I don't know, but I'll just say that, you know, just take the time because you deserve the time and you're worthy of the time to look into yourself and to begin to ask those questions of what you want from a friendship, how do you want your friendship to work, and am I exemplifying those attributes and qualities of a good friend?